Daybreak on BizNews is proudly brought to you by Bonitas, the medical aid for South Africa.
Good morning and welcome to the BizNews Daybreak. It's Friday, the 19th of June, and I'm Patrick Kidd. Let's start with the latest overnight news from our partners at Bloomberg.
The U.S.-Iran interim peace deal is now in effect, and a flurry of oil tanker traffic returned today to the Strait of Hormuz. At the same time, the U.S. declared an end of its naval blockade on vessels transiting to and from Iranian ports and coastal areas. Meantime, Vice President J.D. Vance skirted questions today about whether Iran will one day be able to charge fees for vessels crossing the strait.
That's not about tolling. That's about ensuring that the straits are never used as a choke point for the global economy ever again. It's frankly not what the Iranians want. It's not what the Omanis want. It's not what the GCC wants either. So what we're going to do, of course, working with our allies in the region, is to ensure that that is reflected in the final deal. And if that's not reflected in the final deal, there's not going to be a final deal.
Now, this memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran has been widely panned in Israel. Members of Prime Minister Netanyahu's cabinet believe it gives too many financial concessions to Iran. They also rejected a part of the text declaring a permanent ceasefire in Lebanon. Vice President Vance responded to that criticism.
Donald J. Trump is the only head of state in the entire world who is sympathetic to the nation of Israel at this moment in time. And he happens to be the head of state of the world's superpower. If I was in the cabinet of the Israeli government, I might not be attacking the only powerful ally that I have anywhere left in the entire world.
The U.S. has told the Dutch semiconductor equipment maker ASML it's concerned China may have the top tool for making highly advanced semiconductors. ASML says it never shipped its most cutting-edge technology to China, that being ASML's extreme ultraviolet lithography machines. Here is Bloomberg's Tom Giles.
This is all part of the big picture here is U.S. efforts to basically make it more difficult for China to get its hands on the most advanced AI equipment. And of course, ASML is the maker of these big EUV machines that are used in the manufacture of the most advanced chips.
Now, senior Trump administration officials say they have evidence indicating ASML is not acting in good faith, such as exports to China of gear specifically related to those EUV tools. If so, that would be a violation of U.S.-led export restrictions. A broad risk-on tone filtered through U.S. financial markets. The equity session was defined by rotation into information tech, especially the chip makers. We had the Philadelphia Semiconductor Index jumping today by nearly 6.5% to a record high. Shares in Intel were up more than 10%. That was after President Trump said the chip maker will be working with Apple to design and produce semiconductors domestically. We got reaction from Bloomberg analyst Anurag Rana.
Apple does make its own chip. It goes to TSMC to get them made, and then those their custom chips have been a big story of selling their Macs and their phones. Now, if they are getting a little bit of, you could say, backlog issues because TSMC is really busy doing AI chips, they could go to Intel.
Today, we had the S&P 500 rising 1%. NASDAQ comp was up 1.9% today, and the Dow Industrial Average gaining just 0.1%. Shares in SpaceX were down 3.5%. That's after Wednesday's 5% decline. The stock is still up about 15% for the week and up 37% from last Friday's IPO price of $135. Charles Schwab president and CEO Rick Wurster says retail investors drove strong demand.
You're seeing tremendous interest in AI-related names and the space names. I think it comes from the retail investor being able to touch and feel the level of innovation in our economy. And I think clearly they're holding names that are doing stocks that are doing well with really strong fundamentals. Exactly what the returns will be, only time will tell.
That is Charles Schwab President and CEO Rick Wurster. Separately today, bankers for SpaceX said they are planning to hold calls with investors as soon as next week to discuss a potential bond offering. We're told SpaceX is planning to issue investment-grade U.S. dollar bonds for the very first time. The proceeds would refinance a temporary $20 billion bridge loan that matures in September 2027.
SpaceX's blockbuster market debut has got investors asking a big question. Is the IPO a once-in-a-generation opportunity or overpriced hype? Gins Global's Anthony Ginsberg and Brenthurst Wealth founder Magnus Heystek weigh in on AI giants SpaceX, Starlink, Anthropic, and OpenAI, and tell us where they're putting their money.
Because a hell of an impressive operation there. It's not just these payloads. Look, they launched 165 payloads into orbit last year. They have about an 80% plus market share, Alec. So just on those numbers alone, it's, they're a dominant player. But actually, the cash cow is Starlink, as you know, which is all to do with broadband and satellite communications, helping the Ukrainians and helping people, frankly, in rural areas around the world where the internet connection is rather weak, including they hope places like South Africa. So it's a very impressive operation. There are some arguments about the valuation. There was an expectation of the IPO having a pop because index firms like myself, and we have this tech megatrend that many people have supported, and we appreciated the returns in tech land. Look, there is a revolution going on broadly based here. We've got other things to talk about with Anthropic and OpenAI, of course, also coming down the pike quite soon. So there's a lot of excitement beyond the World Cup here in the US. But if I could just say to you, the excitement on SpaceX goes beyond just these payloads and the orbital launches that he dominates. He's brought XAI in, which is the old Twitter, and it's brought Grok in, which is his own large language models that he's really trying to compete against the likes of ChatGPT and OpenAI. So there's a lot going on inside of this operation. Arguably, index firms like ourselves are all buying into it because we're basically being forced through MSCI and NASDAQ in the first 10 to 15 days of trade to actually buy the stock. So we expected a pop, Alec, and it will probably continue to rise. The question will be a year from now. Some folks believe the valuation over 2 trillion is excessive, and I'll happily leave it at that, and we can chat about it.
To answer your question, why I invested in SpaceX, I need to go back 30 years or so. When a fine young gentleman walked into my office 30 years ago, and he said, "Listen, I'm starting this little financial services company. Don't you want to join me? I've got some shares at 50 cents a share." And I considered it for a while, and I turned him down. And I had some money in the bank at the time, and I rather bought a new BMW. Well, that gentleman was Yanni Mouton, and he started PSG. And I did a number. If I'd bought PSG 30 years ago at 50 cents a share, I would have been a billionaire today. So that burns me from time to time. So I listen to all these analysts who say, no, but you can't value SpaceX, and you need a balance sheet, and you need earnings forecasts, and you need data. I'm saying I'm buying Elon Musk. I'm buying his story. I am not going to let another opportunity pass by. I don't fully understand his business plan. I've read as much as I can, and you've got guys like Jim Chainall saying it's going to drop by 50%. And Oppenheimer and Company, which is a big company in the States, were saying it's a fantastic buy. So there's no consensus in the market, but I said I am not letting this opportunity pass because, first of all, I'm backing Elon Musk. Secondly, this is a fairly unique industry and what he's doing. We don't fully understand what he's going to do. And you have to take some risks in the world. If I think back going back in South Africa 120 years ago, when someone discovered gold in South Africa, in Johannesburg, where we grew up, Alec, was there a business plan? Was there an earnings forecast? Was there corporate governance and all that rubbish? No, you take a chance sometimes in life, and this is my chance. Now, if it works out, fantastic. My kids will fly first class. If it doesn't work out, they'll fly economy class. So
With local government elections on the horizon, South African politics is shifting fast. In his weekly chat with BizNews journalist Chris Steyn, elections analyst Wayne Sussman gave his insights into the DA's cabinet reshuffle, which saw party leader Jordan Hill-Lewis requesting the axing of John Steenhuisen as Agriculture Minister.
In the government of national unity, there is an agreement with all the political parties, and of course the ANC and those political parties. And there was a very clear agreement over what positions, what ministerial positions, what deputy ministerial positions would go to each political party. So if we'll remember, last year, John Steenhuisen had a big falling out with Deon George, and Deon George was dismissed from his position. It was a DA mandated position, and therefore Steenhuisen made the recommendation to President Cyril Ramaphosa, who then effected the change. And this is the same thing here. We know that Jordan Hill-Lewis and John Steenhuisen, because I've said it on record, are close friends, or might have been close friends. Hill-Lewis refused to challenge Steenhuisen at the recent federal Congress because it's his close friend. And then, of course, Steenhuisen made the decision to stand down, and Jordan Hill-Lewis got elected leader. And I think that's important to understand, because I do not think that when Jordan Hill-Lewis woke up as the leader of the DA, it was his intention to sideline John Steenhuisen immediately or imminently. And obviously, the DA must be looking at the Minister of Agriculture. They must be looking at John Steenhuisen's performance and the way he has been perceived in handling the foot and mouth disease, the FMD crisis in South Africa, which is affecting cattle farmers across South Africa. And then with the recent spat to the Chief of Staff, I think that Hill-Lewis had no choice, and the DA had no choice but to move and act against Steenhuisen, because it must have been looking at its polling and worrying about the Afrikaans voters. The voters John Steenhuisen worked so hard in 2024 to get back to the DA, and voters which are going to be key to the party in the road to the 2026 local government election. So I think that was the main reshuffle. Of course, that Steenhuisen gets demoted from the Minister of Agriculture to the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry. So remember, that was a vacancy. That vacancy was actually created by Andrew Whitfield. He was then replaced by Alexandra Abrams, a member of parliament. Now she's also been moved to a new deputy minister position. So that's the first one. He's been replaced by Willie Okamp. Willie Okamp is the person who replaced Deon George. If we remember correctly, Willie Okamp was the national spokesperson of the DA. He had a profile within the DA. And I think, again, here is a recognition of the DA that it is concerned that it is losing Afrikaans voters, and this must be showing up in the polling. What's interesting about Willie Okamp is that while he comes from Kuruman, his family has strong roots in Limpopo, in the Waterberg region, and if my memory serves me correctly, he also has business interests in the Northwest. And I say this because I'm sure that amongst conservative Afrikaans voters, the DA is very vulnerable in parts of the Northwest and Limpopo. So I think they believe that Okamp would arrest that decline.
Healthcare matters, but what matters most?
Having cover for the people who keep this business going.
Bonitas is there for you when it counts. Bonitas, medical aid for South Africa. Visit bonitas.co.za and find your plan.
The US Federal Reserve is holding interest rates steady, but its message to markets is clear. Don't expect cuts anytime soon. BizNews' Irakli looks at how that hawkish stance is filtering through to South African markets.
A new Fed chair on his debut telling the American people his committee will not tolerate inflation, and the market believing him enough to start betting on hikes rather than cuts. And why does that land in Johannesburg? Well, the Fed sets the global price of money. When US rates stay high and the dollar stays firm, capital flows toward America and away from emerging markets like ours. It leans on the rand, lifts our borrowing costs, and forces every CEO and finance minister in this country to think hard about how they fund themselves. That is the thread through the rest of today's show. And did you catch the sidestep? Pressing on the obvious question, if inflation is double your target, why not hike now? Wash stepped around it. That's not indecision, it's a new chair keeping his powder dry, letting the market do the tightening for him. And the same script is playing in Britain. Labour market holding up, unemployment at 4.9%, the Bank of England expected to sit on its hands at 3.75% today. The majors aren't cutting in a hurry. That keeps global money expensive and the rand on a short leash. My view, Walsh has done what every incoming central banker must, establish credibility early on his own terms. For the SA investor, the message is blunt. Don't bet on cheap global money returning soon. Position for higher for longer and keep a foot in gold. Now, from the global price of money to a company paying the price for it, Bright, the Mauritius registered investment holding company, ticker BAT, dropped full-year results this morning, and the number that mattered wasn't earnings. It was R1.51. That is what Bright will charge loyal shareholders to buy into a 2.5 billion rand rights offer, a 25% discount to the theoretical ex-rights price, and a 43% in net asset value after the raise. The verdict was brutal. Bright opened R2.11, touched R1.95, and by mid-morning sat at R2.05, down 10.9%. More than 6 million shares traded, well above its 30-day average. One directional pressure, sellers heading for the door. Now, stripping away all the jargon, a deep discount rights offer is dilution, plain and simple. You follow your rights at R1.51 or your slice shrinks. And that's why shareholders are bailing and why bargain hunters are circling the offer price.
Closing out the week on a lighter note, Bloomberg's Tom Keene and Scarlett Fu take a look at the 3 books that the world's richest man, Elon Musk, credits as his major influences. Keene and Fu appeared on Bloomberg Money last week.
Look at the books of the gentleman in the leather jacket at the New York Stock Exchange a bit ago, and that would be Elon Musk. I look at these, Scarlett. Why don't you run through the 3 books we've got right now?
It's a Foundation series by Isaac Asimov. And apparently this is the book that he put in the red sports car that he shot into space. So he wanted this to be noted for posterity.
If you're of a certain vintage, you dream with Mr. Asimov.
It's a science fiction series. That's what Luigi tells me, our producer. And his favorite book, by the way, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This really has a lot about formulating the right questions. And we know that Elon Musk is a big thinker type. So I think he said that this had a great influence on him during middle school.
And the 3rd book I just think is so important, folks, and poignant here with the death of the gentleman from Brown University, Gordon S. Wood. Gordon Wood was our definitive biographer of Benjamin Franklin. He is the one that brought him to life. And then Walter Isaacson exploded Benjamin Franklin even more into our consciousness. You see it, there was the TV series that was out that was so good with...
Who played Benjamin Franklin, do you know?
I can't remember right now. You're the celebrity lodestone. You should...
It was kind of a trick question.
But the answer is, it's a really important statement about America's first entrepreneur.
I'd like the way you put that, yes.
That's where...
Elon Musk appreciates the profile of Benjamin Franklin by Walter Isaacson. We know that Elon Musk admires Ben Franklin deeply for his journey from being an entrepreneur to being an inventor. And that's kind of how Elon Musk sees himself, along with, all the other hats that he wears.
Let us know here at Bloomberg Money your thoughts on books. I think one of the ways we go is just get 5 books from Scarlett would be a good angle.
Let's just do one a week. I don't know that I can read 5 at once.
Well, who says we have to read them? We can just, talk about them. That's the way it is. I'm reading right now Vali Nasser on Iran, NASR. Francine Lacroix introduced me to him. It is the one volume on Iran.
That's it for this morning's BizNews Daybreak. I'm Patrick Kidd. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Daybreak on BizNews is proudly brought to you by Bonitas, the medical aid for South Africa.